Generations ago, families survived lean budgets using just 3 or 4 basic ingredients. They did not rely on complex recipes or exact measurements. Instead, they used practical knowledge to turn simple staples into deeply nourishing food. We often view these historical meals as symbols of hardship, but they were actually examples of culinary efficiency. Take cornmeal, for example. Mixing cornmeal with water and salt created a thick porridge. When cooked slowly in a heavy iron pot until it pulled away from the sides, it became a dense, filling meal. To understand this better, it was often poured into a pan, left to cool overnight, and then sliced and fried the next morning. The outside turned crisp, while the inside remained soft, perfectly soaking up any available syrup. Today, this exact preparation is served in high-end restaurants as polenta, yet it originated as an incredibly cheap way to maximize resources. That same cornmeal formed the foundation of countless other meals. When pork fat was rendered down, the leftover crispy bits were folded directly into cornbread batter. This added essential fat and a rich, smoky flavor, ensuring absolutely no part of the animal was wasted. Cornbread was also paired with whatever liquid was available. A common evening meal consisted simply of cold buttermilk poured over crumbled cornbread in a glass. The bread absorbed the liquid, creating a cool, filling supper that required no extra cooking. Another variation involved the nutrient-rich broth left over from boiling greens known as pot liquor. Pouring this dark broth over cornbread provided a highly concentrated source of vitamins and minerals that would otherwise be thrown away. Pairing these cornmeal dishes with beans created a nutritional powerhouse. A pot of pinto beans, simmered all day with a small piece of salt pork, transformed into a rich, silky stew. The pork acted purely as a flavoring agent, stretching a tiny amount of meat across an entire pot. Modern researchers have analyzed this specific combination of beans, salt pork, and cornbread, and the findings are remarkable. It turns out this simple meal covered nearly all daily requirements for protein, fiber, iron, and calcium. It was nutritionally superior to the processed foods that eventually replaced it. Similar methods were used with dried navy beans and a single ham hock, or dried split peas simmered with a leftover ham bone. The peas would dissolve, naturally thickening the broth, while the bone infused the soup with deep flavor, resulting in a meal packed with dietary fiber and essential vitamins. Practical cooking also meant utilizing everything the environment offered. Before the first winter frost, unripe tomatoes were gathered, sliced, coated in cornmeal, and fried in bacon grease. The bitterness of the green tomato perfectly balanced the rich cooking fat, turning a potential waste product into a staple. Similarly, early spring brought dandelion greens. Long before they were recognized as a modern superfood rich in vitamins A and C, these wild greens were gathered by hand, wilted in a skillet with hot bacon fat, and finished with a splash of vinegar. Even staple crops like potatoes and onions were maximized. Layering sliced potatoes and onions in a covered skillet with cooking fat and leaving them on low heat allowed them to slowly caramelize. This transformed basic root vegetables into a deeply savory dish. Leftover mashed potatoes were mixed with a little flour and salt, then fried flat to create crispy potato pancakes, a clever solution to prevent food waste. Bread was never thrown away. Thick slices of stale bread were revived by pouring hot milk and a little butter over them, creating a warm, comforting bowl that settled the stomach. If eggs and milk were available, that same stale bread was baked into a rich pudding, turning leftover scraps into a celebrated treat. When sugar was scarce, a simple slice of white bread spread with butter and local cane syrup became a reliable, quick meal. Crumbled saltine crackers soaked in cold milk provided a similar kind of simple, immediate nourishment when the pantry was mostly bare. Gravy was a primary tool for making a small amount of food feel substantial. Flour cooked in leftover meat drippings formed a base that could be thinned with milk, water, or even canned tomatoes. Tomato gravy, rich and tangy, could be poured over biscuits or fried cornmeal, transforming a dry staple into a heavy, satisfying meal. When there was no meat at all, plain rice was topped with a thin gravy made just from the browned bits left in a cooking pan and stretched with water. It was a completely resourceful way to capture every ounce of flavor. Perhaps the most surprising resourcefulness appeared in baking. When ingredients like lemons, eggs, or butter were unavailable, cooks relied on food chemistry. Vinegar pie is a perfect example. Using apple cider vinegar mixed with sugar and eggs created a sharp tartness that closely mimicked expensive lemon curd. During periods of strict rationing, bakers figured out that combining vinegar and baking soda created a reaction that could make a chocolate cake rise perfectly without any eggs or milk. Even dried apples were reconstituted and layered between thin rounds of simple pastry, pressed together overnight to form a dense, portable cake that required no refrigeration. In the most extreme cases of empty pantries, a mixture of water, flour, sugar, and butter was baked into a pie crust until it set into a sweet custard. Here is what actually happened to this culinary knowledge. Decades ago, the food industry began a massive effort to change how people cooked. Companies hired experts to promote the idea that cooking from scratch was difficult and old-fashioned. They heavily marketed canned soups and prepackaged meals as the modern superior alternative. Over time, the strategy worked. The practical skills of utilizing cheap, raw ingredients began to fade. A meal of boiled macaroni, canned tomatoes, and sliced hot dogs, once a quick fix in relief kitchens, became a blueprint for processed convenience dinners. People stopped boiling dried beans or making pan gravies and instead started buying those same flavors in packages at a much higher cost. The knowledge of how to stretch a single ham hock across 12 servings, or how to properly wilt wild greens, was largely replaced by the convenience of opening a can. What matters here is understanding that these historical methods were not just about getting by. They represented a deep understanding of ingredients, food chemistry, and zero-waste efficiency. Combining simple elements like pinto beans and cornmeal, or utilizing every drop of pan drippings, provided complete, sustaining nutrition. The raw ingredients still cost less and offer immense nutritional value. The methods are still perfectly viable. It simply requires looking past the expectation of modern convenience and recognizing the sheer genius in basic, unadorned food.